Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. So, today we're diving into a topic that honestly sounds a little bit intimidating at first glance: process validation. I mean, just hearing those two words together might make you want to instantly take a nap. But stick with me because once we break down the jargon, it is actually incredibly fascinating. Let's figure this out together. You know, if you've ever stared blankly at a dense manufacturing manual, you know it can totally feel like reading another language. But underneath all that dense text is one really simple, absolutely crucial concept. It really begs the question, how do manufacturers guarantee that batch number one is just as flawless as batch number 1 million? Whether we're talking about a life-saving medication or just your favorite everyday shampoo, how do we actually know the product works every single time? Well, don't worry, because you definitely do not need a PhD to get this. Okay, let's dive into our game plan for today. First, we'll cover what is process validation. Second, the master plan and the paperwork. Third, the qualification alphabet soup. And finally, the 4 types of validation. All right, let's jump right into section 1. What exactly is process validation? Okay, so according to the official FDA and EMA guidelines, process validation is the analysis of data gathered throughout the design and manufacturing of a product to confirm that the process can reliably output products of a determined standard. Oof, okay, let's be real for a second here. That sounds like absolute corporate speak, right? It's a super formal way of explaining something that's actually pretty intuitive. Basically, the simple translation is just this: we're making sure our recipe works perfectly, every single time, no matter what. Think about baking your absolute favorite batch of chocolate chip cookies. If you follow the recipe exactly, use the exact same ingredients, and bake them at the exact same temperature, you expect the exact same delicious cookie to come out of that oven, right? Process validation is literally just proving with hard data that your manufacturing inputs, like your ingredients, your equipment, your mixing times, will always lead to consistent, high-quality outputs. And to make sure that actually happens, regulatory agencies break it down into a really simple 3-step linear life cycle. Step 1 is process design. This is where you actually build your process based on what you already know. Step 2 is process qualification, which is where you test your facility and your equipment to see if that design actually works out in the real world. And step 3 is continued process verification. Notice how it flows continuously? That's because you don't just test it once and walk away. No way. You constantly monitor the feedback during routine manufacturing in this ongoing loop to ensure it stays perfect. Which brings us to section 2, the master plan. And yes, the paperwork. I know, paperwork isn't the most glamorous part. But in manufacturing, if it isn't documented, it basically didn't happen. And honestly, this documentation makes everyone's life so much easier. It all kicks off with the Validation Master Plan, or the VMP. Think of the VMP as the ultimate group project syllabus. It gives you the total picture of the project, it tracks the progress, assigns responsibilities so everyone knows exactly what their job is, and most importantly, it identifies the acceptance criteria before you even start. It literally tells you exactly what passing the test looks like before you even take it. How helpful is that? Now, what's really interesting here is when we look at the actual protocol. This 10-step flow acts as our exact detailed study instructions, and it covers everything. We're talking from detailing the chemical synthesis in step 1 to a strict list of approved vendors in step 2, all the way through to step 10, which handles deviations and conclusions. It even requires a rock-solid scientific rationale for every single thing you are doing. You absolutely cannot wing it here. Every little step is meticulously mapped out. So, what's the actual difference between protocols and reports? It's pretty straightforward. The protocol is your plan. It's the study rules, the objectives, and the test methods. Basically, it's what you promise you're going to do. The report, on the flip side, is what actually happened. It contains your real results, evaluated against those predetermined criteria we talked about. And if anything goes wrong, well, that's called a deviation. And the report is where you have to scientifically justify exactly why it happened and how you fixed it. All right, moving on to section 3, the qualification alphabet soup. Okay, DQ, IQ, OQ, PQ, it is total acronym overload, right? It can feel super overwhelming, but let's break this down. Imagine we're buying a brand new super fancy espresso machine. First up is DQ, design qualification. This just means picking the right tool. Does this machine actually have the features we need before we spend the money? Next is IQ, installation qualification. We bought it, and now we're just making sure we're plugging it in correctly. Are all the parts here? Is it wired up safely? Third is OQ, operational qualification.
This is testing all the buttons to make sure it functions exactly the way the manual says it should. And finally, PQ, performance qualification. This is using it daily, flawlessly. Can it make my favorite latte perfectly, every single morning, under normal, routine conditions? See? Once you connect the acronyms to something real, it totally clicks. Now, operational qualification, or OQ, is actually super fascinating because it's literally all about the worst-case scenario. We want to push that machine to its absolute limits. We want to see if it breaks under pressure. We check all the alarms, we flip all the switches, we run it at the highest speed or the hottest temperature the manual allows. Why? Because if the process stays consistent even when it's totally stressed out, we know for sure we have a robust, reliable system.
Almost at the finish line. Section 4, the 4 types of validation. So validation happens at 4 distinct phases of a product's life cycle. If you do it before you ever start commercial production, that's prospective validation. If you do it during routine production, it's concurrent validation. If you're looking back at past history, it's retrospective validation. And if you make a change and have to do it all over again, that's revalidation. Let's zoom in on these just a bit more. First, let's compare prospective and concurrent. Prospective validation happens pre-market. It involves super strict risk analysis, breaking everything down into individual steps long before anything ever reaches the public. It's the standard, super safe route. Concurrent validation, though, happens during routine production, meaning the product is actually being released while the validation is happening. It's definitely riskier, but sometimes it's absolutely necessary. Like, say for an urgent public health need, where getting the product out quickly is literally critical, though believe me, it is incredibly closely monitored. Then we have retrospective validation. Imagine looking back at a completely flawless track record. You can only use this for products that are already on the market and have been running perfectly for a long time. You have to analyze the historical records of 10 to 30 consecutive perfect batches. I mean, just think about that for a second. 10 to 30 batches without a single flaw. You have to prove, using trend analysis and showing there are no significant complaints, that you've basically been doing it perfectly all along. And finally, revalidation. Listen, this is a big deal. If you change literally anything major in your validated process, you have to reprove that the whole thing still works. If you get a new piece of equipment, if you change the supplier where you buy your raw materials, if you move to a new facility, or change the formulation, boom, you trigger revalidation. It really proves just how strict and tightly controlled these manufacturing environments have to be. Which leaves us with this final, honestly kind of mind-blowing thought. If you change a single ingredient in a perfectly validated process, is it still the same product? Well, in the eyes of manufacturing quality control, the answer is a hard no. It's a whole new ballgame, and you have to prove its safety and consistency all over again from scratch. It just goes to show how beautifully fragile yet incredibly important quality control really is to keep us all safe. Hopefully, this explainer helps clear up some of that jargon for you and gives you a whole new appreciation for the products you use every single day. Thanks for joining me.